Hello, I'm David Rath, Senior Contributing Editor for Healthcare Innovation, and thanks for everyone joining our webinar today, Getting to the Go Live, Designing a Successful Technology Deployment. Today, we're going to be discussing several things: the trials of finding the right solution, helping to prepare and plan for an implementation, some important technical considerations, and the customer experience. And we're joined today by Christy Etheridge, a Senior Project Manager at Mobile Heartbeat, who has over 30 years of experience in the healthcare industry, evaluating strategic initiatives and developing recommendations and producing high-quality deliverables to align corporate strategies. We're also joined by Adit Shah, a Senior Solutions Engineer at Mobile Heartbeat, who has worked with many small and large customers on successful implementations. He leads a team of solution engineers who serve as a technical bridge between the customer and Mobile Heartbeat. And lastly, we're joined by Michael Goad, the team lead solution architect for CDW's mobile team. And Mike has a deep technical and hands-on experience in device management and security. And Mike's going to kick us off today. We all know that hospital IT infrastructures are unique, and it's important that your IT vendors know how to interoperate and leverage your existing IT investments, which I know you have a lot of experience with, Mike. Maybe you could start off with some of the challenges healthcare organizations face when trying to find a clinical communications platform.
Yeah, thanks, David. Really great question. Healthcare to me is in this transition phase of going to mobile. When we look back about 3 to 5 years, there weren't many mobile applications built for healthcare for mobile devices. We fast forward today and we've got a plethora of applications specifically built for healthcare for mobile devices. A great example of that is the EHRs. We're seeing a lot of the EHRs take modules from their desktop, their VDI-based EHR clients and produce them in a mobile application for mobile devices. And to be able for care team members to be able to do things like documentation, look up patient data, as well as look up a lot of other information that is, beneficial to them. And we're seeing a lot of organizations wanting to be able to deploy those mobile applications because they've invested in them, and they bring a lot of great use cases and workflows for their clinical care team members. Additionally, we're starting to see a lot of organizations, more specifically the care team member, the clinical users, wanting to explore additional channels of communication. Traditionally, if we wanted to connect with someone, a care team member would have to do one of two things: either try to go find that person, which is a task in itself sometimes, or try to call them, which can lead to a long game of phone tag. So we've seen a lot of care team members looking at the value of things like secure messaging, where we can send a text to an existing team member, validate that they've read the text, and then allow that care team member to be able to quickly respond, which brings a lot more effective communication and efficiency around a communication. So I've seen a lot of organizations see the value in platforms like Mobile Heartbeat, where we can create that single pane of glass, where we can have multiple ways that we can communicate with each other, from voice to messaging, as well as integration of alarms and alerts. So being able to bring systems like the pagers and the nurse calls in. So now that when a care team member gets a nurse call, they can interact with that directly on the mobile device and talk back to the patient on the mobile device. So it unlocks a lot more workflows and use cases that we can do on mobile. But one of the biggest things that I often get is, hey, that's great, but how do I actually start the search process? What does that look like? And a lot of times customers will start at the devices. So it's a lot of times it's a smartphone type of conversation where, should I go iOS or should I go Android? That itself is a very long conversation, but that is usually where I see customers start at the very beginning. But it's more than just taking a device, putting an application on there and putting it on the floor. There's a lot of other things that have to go, that depend on each other for that to work. One of the first things that we look at is, how do we manage and secure the device? We have a conversation around things like MDM, mobile device management. The role of the MDM is to be able to encrypt and secure the device, be able to distribute things like Wi-Fi payloads, so those devices can talk on the internet now, as well as it's a mechanism to do application distribution. So getting those applications to the devices so they can actually be used by the clinical users. Additionally, we have to, it's important to look at what is the goal of those applications? What workflows do we want to get out of them? And then also infrastructure readiness. If we're bringing in hundreds or thousands of devices, can the infrastructure, more importantly, the network, absorb that amount of devices? And also, especially if we're bringing in calling voice over IP, can the infrastructure support that? Those devices are roaming from AP to AP. Are we optimized for that type of experience? But the biggest thing that I often see overlooked or underlooked is shift change workflow. What happens at the end of the shift when that device gets handed off? It's very often that I see 3, 4, I've even seen some organizations that have 8 different applications. So are we expecting every end user to log in and out at the beginning and end of shift for all of those many different applications? That itself could be a very large chunk of time at the beginning and end of shift. So, there's platforms and solutions out there that can help automate those tasks, but it's often that we also want to look at things like mobile SSO to be able to remove some of those manual tasks and automate some of that authentication. But really the best person that I've worked with is Christy. She's a project manager, and I've worked with her with a variety of different projects. And she's really a great resource and asset to help organizations really plan and get ready for clinical communication. So Christy, what are some of those things that organizations really need to look at when they're starting their clinical communication journey?
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. So one of the things that I have found when working with any new customer is that they're apprehensive. They really don't know what to expect, what they need to complete as project tasks, or how they're even going to get the work done for the completion of the project. So we actually have a well-defined and proven implementation and structure plan, but right out of the gate, most technical teams want to know who, what, when, where, why, and how within the project scope and the plan. So a great example of that is actually working with the facility on any questions that they may have with the security and privacy within the platform. So our teams know how extremely important this is, and we work very closely with each facility's IS security department to complete any security profile questionnaires, attend security review meetings, as well as provide any other documentation that is required. We're actually very diligent on this item and have all of the safeguards in place, and can also integrate with the facility's MDM, which Mike mentioned, which is another point of security there at the customer level. So I usually find it's actually extremely helpful to meet with a facility's project sponsor pretty early on and find out where that customer is, how they work internally, and really determine the best strategy for engaging the project team. I call this my jumpstart period. So every customer is not the same. They each have their own unique internal structure, culture, as well as environment. So it's crucial for me to take the time to learn and understand this early on any strategy planning for the customer project itself. One of the biggest questions I get is, who do we actually need on our project team? So this answer can mean many things to the customer, as they may have a resource that is responsible for each specific area of expertise, or they have resource constraints, and one person actually can take on a multitude of any of the specific tasks required. So looking at that question, the main resources that we require up front very early in the project plan is a network administrator. And that's actually going to include your wireless system administrator as well. We also require server, telephony, and MDM team members, as well as an access administrator who can assist us with any of the Active Directory questions that we have on the project. In addition, any integration analysts that may assist with nurse call, device integration, ADT, and HL7, those are all very much needed as well. But as Mike mentioned earlier, the clinical team should really be involved in the scope as well. So some members of that team may actually include the nursing and physician representatives, a clinical informatics liaison. If you have someone in the facility that can be a champion, that's very knowledgeable about workflows and staffing within the facility, that is great. And it would also probably be very advantageous to include the facility's education or the clinical training team early on as well. So At the Jumpstart, this also gives the facility project sponsor an opportunity to actually meet with our team members and ask any specific questions so that they actually may prepare their internal processes and team members for the upcoming meetings. So I think it's really invaluable that when we have a customer come on board, they are given a dedicated assigned team from Mobile Heartbeat. So you not only get a dedicated PM like myself, but you also get an assigned solutions engineer such as Audie, a support engineer, as well as an implementation consultant. So our team actually works with that customer to gain insight regarding their current infrastructure. We also look at the culture and then assist with any required facility assessments so that we may actually customize a solution specific to that facility's needs and help to create and develop those seamless workflow efficiencies that they are so much desired at the customer level. We also consider how we want to complete our project team meetings. So some customers want the technical and the clinical teams to work separately, but they want them to also work in parallel at the same time, and then come together for group meetings every couple of weeks just to provide updates to each other. Some actually prefer to have everyone within the same meetings, which really requires a well-defined agenda to ensure that we hit all of the technical and the clinical requirements in each session. So we actually work with the customer, schedule all of the required recurring sessions, and get those on everyone's calendar way up front before we actually start the kickoff actually. So I really consider the Jumpstart meeting sort of the housekeeping stage, so that we get the administrative busy work completed and out of the way. And then that allows us to then begin our focus on defining that project scope and goals, which in turn lays down that foundation to lead into the kickoff with all the project team members itself. So I will actually stop here and mention that our Mobile Heartbeat team have created some awesome implementation white papers that really guide a customer or even a prospect through the phases of implementing a communication solution. So there are two guides that actually come to my mind, which are specific to either IS or the clinical team. So they can actually be found on our website, but I will also provide a link to these within our webcast documentation too. So let's actually go ahead and move on to our kickoff. So the kickoff is actually meant to focus on the project plan itself, but also bring together all those team members from the facility as well as Mobile Heartbeat. So I've actually spent a lot of time in my past studying and focusing on the 5 stages of team development. Therefore, I actually feel it's so important to begin any project with that Jumpstart meeting. It lays that groundwork for me to better understand the culture of any customer, so that when we bring all of those teams together, I can actually usually move through the stages of forming and storming to get into the productive norming and performing team stages quickly and efficiently. Again, also when we bring those project team members together, they may not all be aware of what our application actually does. So I actually find it very valuable to complete a demo at the kickoff, and so that all the team members have that foundation of seeing the product in action. It sort of brings everyone to the same page, the same playing field. And then that actually gives them insight into what they will be building and the anticipation of how it will actually function within their facility's environment. So that alone actually builds the excitement and the camaraderie within the project team itself. So the kickoff meeting will consist of walking the entire project team through a high-level project implementation roadmap, and it will consist of actually the technical as well as the clinical infrastructure builds, as well as some of the other tasks that are required. It's all about communication and clearly laying out the action plan while also providing the assigned roles and responsibilities. But I also want to ensure that all ideas and expectations regarding the project are voiced by the team members as well. It's really important to establish that collaboration technique early. So once everyone is aware of the plan and what's involved, as well as determining any risks or conflicts, as well as mitigation and opportunities, the team can really move forward in a cohesive environment because that trust is being established. It's our job as Mobile Heartbeat team to ensure that that customer knows that they are not in this alone, and that our experts are with them through every stage of the technical as well as the clinical builds into the implementation and go live. Now, most technical teams, they want a roadmap. Let's face it, they have specific requirements that they must meet internally, whether it be setting up a new server, configuring a new switch, or even establishing a new office with all of the appropriate hardware, which, as we know, requires additional mapping or programming of the telephony system or the CPUs, as well as Active Directory and the EHR groups as well. And of course, we can't forget that each individual customer has their own unique internal change control procedures as well. So this is actually where the Mobile Heartbeat excels over most vendors, because there is a clear project plan along with an entire customer portal full of documentation with step-by-step instructions. Those instructions are for the entire infrastructure build, integrations, device readiness and configurations, and testing, as well as go live planning. I can tell you, I was actually blown away. I have never seen a vendor have that much documentation when I actually came to Mobile Heartbeat. So along with this information, we actually, our team works with each project team member to ensure appropriate resourcing is verified prior to developing the schedule to include the milestones to achieve the go live expectations. So I actually use a formula of 7-14-30, in which the team defines what is due, what is expected, and what can be achieved in 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days. So as I work with each customer and really understand how they complete their product deliverables, the resources that are involved for each task, as well as how we can sort of infuse that into our well-defined project plan, it really allows me to formulate a project schedule that the team may follow with pretty steadfast assurance. So once again, I believe communication is the key, and we really hold ourselves accountable to each customer. For me personally, having that background working in the healthcare industry for so long and being that healthcare IS customer myself, and now serving those same customers as a vendor partner, it really allows me the invaluable insight and understanding so that I can really assist with the transition and implementation of our product delivery, our initiation, and the engagement strategies with that customer. At Mobile Heartbeat, I sort of coined a phrase that we really strive towards that customer focus, centricity, as well as the commitment. Now, there will always be obstacles that any project will have to overcome. It's just a part of project itself. So that's why it's so important to work with the team early on and really define any of those potential risks and conflicts. So if we really know what those are early, I can consistently work with a team, check in with status updates to determine if we're still within those parameters, or if we require any of the mitigation opportunities that I reviewed earlier with the team. So our project managers and implementation consultants keep everyone on point. We have various communication tools, such as the project plan itself, along with our project notes and minutes, diagrams and flowcharts. I've even created flowcharts based on integrations with each customer. So it's actually very valuable to stay ahead of any of those potential risks for the project task, the schedule, or any resource constraints, so that I can then communicate any of those issues to the project sponsor and the administration team accordingly. Now, it's really extremely helpful that the customer actually has internal meetings outside of our Mobile Heartbeat project team meetings. They actually need to review internally their readiness, their preparation strategies, and their status update check-ins as well. So I know many customers that actually complete these internal sessions, and the facilities project sponsor actually provides feedback from those sessions so that I can update the project plan accordingly. Now, Mike, I know you've worked with tons of customers. So what have you seen with customers during these project implementations?
Yeah, thanks, Christy. What I've seen is it's a better together scenario. IT and clinical really have to work together, and you spoke about this earlier. Um, if they don't work together, that's where we start seeing challenges around adoption of technology. So let's say if IT is trying to do this on their own and they introduce a new technology, say, here you go, here's a device and this cool technology. What happens off the time is Clinico's like, this doesn't really hit all the workflows that I need, doesn't hit all the checkboxes. So I'm not really going to use this. Thanks, but no thanks. And on the clinical side, if we have clinical, looking at applications and implementing those technologies, what happens on the IT side is if clinical needs support, something goes wrong, I need to troubleshoot something, IT may or may not know how to support that more, but more importantly, a lot of times they don't have the skill set to support that because they don't know the new technology. So it's very important that IT and clinical work together around the project. And a good example of things that I've seen is I work with customers and they often call it like a device roadshow. So they'll work with IT and clinical work together and say, let's get some different devices, and let's put some proof of concept applications on there. And they'll take a day or two and have a whole bunch of their clinical end users come in and just, be able to interact with the devices, get to, feel the devices, the form factors, and interact with some of the applications and get really good feedback of, hey, I like this, I don't like this. That is a great example of how I've seen IT and clinical working together to try to figure out, what are the best technologies and the workflows. But something very important around that is we have a lot of new technologies and workflows that are going to be implemented. So we have to figure out, or do we have infrastructure readiness around this? And, really one of the best resources on here is Audie. He's a senior engineer with Mobile Heartbeat that helps customers really plan for the technologies that need to be implemented. So Audie, what are some of what are the considerations that customers need to go through around technology readiness?
Yeah, good question, Mike. And as Christy said, it's a journey. And Mobile Heartbeat's MH Care solution is on-premise solution. So we rely heavily on the hospital's IT team as well as their infrastructure. We have worked with several hospitals with different sizes. So based on that, we have come up with different phases of implementation. And I'm going to discuss all of them today. So everyone who is listening get an idea. So we have 4 phases. The very first one is called the discovery phase. So in this particular phase, we set up a meeting with the hospital's IT staff. And the IT staff, when I say, it includes everyone, the load balancer team, the network team, the firewall team, the MDM team. All of them are gathered. As Christy mentioned, it's a kickoff call. So we go through the Mobile Heartbeat architecture on this particular call. And as you can imagine, this might be the first time that the technical team is actually seeing the product. They might have heard about it. So we go through the demo and, we show them how the data flows. Usually the hospital's IT team is more concerned on the security, even though we have answered the security questions at the beginning of the process, but they want to understand what's happening. So on the discovery side, we ask them the questions: what type of telephony system they are using, what infrastructure they have, like if they have virtual environments, if they have physical environments, and if they have licenses to support some of the Mobile Heartbeat technology part. And as I mentioned before, all the phases are two-way phases. So it's not just the discovery part on Mobile Heartbeat side. It is also the discovery on the customer's IT stuff as well, right? So as I mentioned before, that they are concerned about security, we go through all those process and we show them how the data works. They are concerned about if we audit everything, that they can grab reports. We answer all those questions during this discovery phase. So that brings me to the second phase, which is called build phase. So MHQR is highly customizable product So based on the discovery phase, we prepare a solution that is a custom fit for the hospital's infrastructure. That includes high availability, the number of users, and all that. We create the architecture diagram and we provide the specs to the IT team. This sets the expectation for each team and guides them on their part. Christie's project plan also starts taking shape in this particular phase. And it is needless to say that we prepared the test system specs as well. So we are ready to test any new integration or any new upgrades for mobile heartbeat before we put that in the production. In this particular phase, the hospital starts provisioning basic infrastructure. They also start ordering phone. They also start Wi-Fi analysis as well. The next comes to delivery phase. So based on the specs on the that we have provided, the IT teams provides us the databases, the servers, the load balancers, and mobile heartbeat installs the software and configures some of the hardware based on the requirement. This phase, as you can imagine, is comes with a lot of challenges because this phase involves a lot of work as well. So we have our internal team of experts as well as partners that always find a solution or at least a workaround that makes everyone happy. This is also the phase where we start the integration part with other part of the hospital, like nurse call assignments or telemetry system. We have a great set of APIs that the hospitals leverage for the best user experience. Once that is done, then comes the validation part, and we try to make sure that everything is working prior to go live, so there is no surprises. This includes immense effort from not only the IT team, but also the clinical team. As Mike mentioned, that there is shift and workflows. There are check-in, check-out processes for mobile phones. Everything is decided, tested during this particular phase. The testing process is completed prior to the go live, and at the end of the technical journey, I believe that the customer's IT team feels the sense of accomplishment as they have implemented a strong product with a solid infrastructure. Mike, I know that you have had some customers reach out to you afterwards. What is your perspective?
Yeah, thanks, Adi. When customers reach out to us, the thing we find the most is they're never done. They always want to keep expanding or keep innovating on what they've done. So it's often that, I'll have a customer come to us and say, we implemented mobile heartbeat and we saw, X in efficiencies because we're able to communicate so much faster, whether that's, hey, we've seen an expansion of secure messaging between our care team members or so forth. So, really then they start talking about, I really want to do this now. Can we integrate this system to do this? So they're always thinking about what's next for their care team members, optimizing their day. They want to make their lives better. And so they're using technology to do that. Additionally, it's often that we see organizations say, hey, we did this. We helped our clinical users. I want to expand. What can we do on the patient bedside now? What technologies, what can we do there? So it's that's often what I see is, they're always thinking about the next thing. Which is awesome to see from customers. They want to make the lives of both their employees and their patients better, and they're using technology to do it.
Mike, I actually could not agree more. So we have so many customers that actually start with just a basic communication platform, and then they add on other integrations as they can based on their budget or resources, etc. Or then we have some customers that actually go big and they actually implement our platform with their nurse call, telemetry, and on-call scheduling, as well as paging service integrations right from the very start. So that's actually the beauty of it and the beauty of our platform. We actually work with each customer and really customize the project and the project plan to what they actually need today. But we're always constantly there for them tomorrow as well. So we can actually pick up pretty easily and immediately with a second, third, or fourth phase if needed. Another thought that I had here as you were talking, and I think is really key to our customers, and I've heard that it's very much appreciated as well, is that each customer actually continues with their same assigned mobile heartbeat team members, even after go live. So they can really be assured that they have someone that is extremely familiar with their site, all of their workflows, as well as their build from day one and beyond. It's actually just another way that we hold ourselves accountable and are committed to the customer success with our product here at Mobile Heartbeat.
Thanks for that great presentation, guys. We do have some good questions. Mike, you mentioned at the outset, people usually start with the device. And one of the questions here is, would you recommend iPhones or Android devices? And what are some of the differences?
It's a great question that deserves a very long conversation. But really, when I work with customers and we're trying to figure out, should I go iOS or should I go Android? There's a couple things that are considered around that. So when we look at Android devices and more specifically look at rugged Android devices, those types of devices are specifically designed for the enterprise and for healthcare. So they have plastics that are meant to be cleaned by harsh chemicals, meant to be dropped. A lot of times they have additional hardware on the device, like a barcode reader. And then on the iOS side, it's we often see organizations needing to add additional cases or sleds to make that more rugged and be able to be clean. So when we look at iOS versus Android, it's a lot of times we have to balance it. What kind is it? Is it actually ready, or what do we need to do to make that device ready? Additionally, we see a lot of parity between the applications between iOS and Android now. Maybe a couple years ago that wasn't always true, but definitely investigate whatever applications that you are looking to introduce on the device. Make sure there's parity between them. It's often that I see iOS used here and Android used here. Don't be afraid to mix. There's definitely some reasons for standardization, but you have to weigh what capabilities and features you need out of those devices. And thirdly, also around familiarity of the OS. It's very, a lot of users are very familiar with the iOS experience. So handing them an iOS device, there's probably going to be a little bit less of a learning curve adopting iOS than it is on Android. There's definitely things that we can do on the Android side to make that experience, that learning curve less by, customizing that experience. But it does play a role in balancing familiarity with that. So just, when it comes to at the end of the day, it's balancing the features and capabilities between both the devices. The form factor plays a huge role, and enterprise ready. It's I often see, like, when we look at rugged Android, it's one device that's built for that. And then we look at iOS, a lot of IT managers also look at it. I have to manage two entities. I have to manage an iOS device and I have to manage a case. So just think about those type of things and balance between capabilities, accessories, features, and also familiarity of the OS.
Great. Okay. Our next question, I think, is for Christy. You spoke about who on the staff should be involved in these projects. The question is, what other internal resources are needed or recommended for a project like this?
Yeah, that's a really great question as well. So it's important that a project sponsor or a manager at the facility is available for the technical as well as the clinical initiatives within that project scope. So these will actually be the go-to people. So if there are ever any specific critical decisions that are required and the project team cannot answer them themselves, those are the persons that we would actually go to get that final answer. I would also advise that, having leadership team members on the project team is important, but having those boots on the ground personnel that are really familiar with the challenges that the current team members are having today can really bring great insight to building that platform for the most optimal workflow enhancement experience. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Next one's for Adi. The person asks, how do we effectively integrate voice?
Yeah, great question. We have partnership with all the industry leading telephony systems. So, we can directly integrate with those systems. What that means is you do not have to change any dialing rules. So the users can use all the current rules that they are using. They don't have to learn any new patterns. And let's say if you don't use any industry leading telephony system, and if you have your PBX system, then we can integrate with that as well. So we have our own homebrew product, and we can trunk with your PBX, and that way the users who are using mobile heartbeat MHCare product can use your current PBX to call each other. But calling is one of our core functionalities, so we know how things work and we know how to make it work.
Okay, well, here's a follow-on question for you. Is there anything we need to do with our wireless infrastructure to optimize performance?
Again, great question. Wireless was an issue probably 5 years ago. I know that hospitals' network team are working tirelessly to make the Wi-Fi's better. Because the extensive uses by the nurses and doctors. It can be their personal devices or the devices that they use provided by the hospital. But let's say if you think that your hospital needs any Wi-Fi assessment, we do have partnership with phone manufacturers that we can bring to your hospital, and working with your network team and those partners, we can do the assessment. And in the past, those assessments have provided a really, really great recommendation. So, and hospitals have seen great benefit out of it.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank all three of you for a great presentation today. And to the audience, if we didn't get a chance to answer one of your questions today, someone from the Mobile Heartbeat team will follow up with you. So thanks to everyone for participating, and have a great afternoon.